Bujo in the noy marking a duck. Anin Kagegabo Indigenous. Make an ock and do them. Make an ock water wing and dunjaba. Beshoga kabakong and downungom. And what I began with was an Ojibwe protocol greeting. I said, hello, all of my relatives. My name is Kagegabo. I'm Turtle Clan. I'm a descendant of Turtle Mountain. I live close to Kabakong, the place of the falls, Minneapolis. And I wanted to hop on live today. And one, I haven't done it for a while. So if you're listening today, thank you so much for listening. And we're approaching a new moon. And I wanted to get on live and talk about one of the names, the Ojibwe names for February. And that's the Webinige-giizis. The Webinige-giizis, that literally means the throwing away moon. And I remember the first time I read about this in Ojibwe class. It came from Nawakamagukweban, the late Maud Keg, and she had a chapter in her book called Webinige-giizis. And she spoke about this month. And people would get a stick. In this case, this is Misquabbamish. This is red willow. Some people use adobe, alder. And she said that people would tie a tobacco tie to the end of the stick, and at night they would go out, they would look at the moon, and they would yell out, "Nawebanon and Dakosiwan, Nawebanon and Dakosiwan," and then they would take the stick and throw it at the moon. And what that really means is, I am throwing away my illness. I am throwing away my sickness. Akosiwan is your sickness. Nawebanon, I am throwing it away. And so, something I absolutely love about this is that for Anishinaabe people and many Indigenous people all over the world, the new year begins in spring. So maybe you have had some resolutions that you began in January and you haven't quite followed through with them. For me, this is a moment to revisit those and say, all right, I'm going to throw this away for the new year as spring is approaching, as the new year is approaching. And sometimes we think Koziwan is just something physical in our bodies. And when I spoke to my Ojibwe professor about this, and we got into a really great in-depth discussion, he was like, Gedak Koziwan, your illness, your sickness, that could be you're drinking, you're smoking. It could be your anger, your sadness, your anxiety. I love the way that word for anxiety in Ojibwe is described. Baba is to go around, in Aindom is to think. You're caught in a vicious circle of thoughts, and the more you think about something, the more anxiety and frustration it's creating. And it's all happening in your mind. It's all happening with thought. And for me, this is a beautiful opportunity to take a moment and throw all of that away, to let go of it, to release it. And no matter what it is, in that conversation, he was like, Gokomisanan, our grandmother, can accept whatever you are throwing at her. She can handle it and still shine on you with unconditional love. So for so many of us today, if you don't feel like doing that particular ceremony, you can still engage with this. You can still have this be a part of the ceremony of your everyday life. This letting go, this throwing away. And I know for so many of us, especially with the current political situation, both here in the United States and in Canada and all over the world, we are, subjected to a non-stop onslaught of news, of tidings, of happenings. And each one of those can really provoke an emotional response in all of us. And for me, to be kind of exhausted from all of it, emotionally exhausted, and the more emotionally exhausted we get frustrated, we get maybe angry, we get sad, we feel cut off, that word for sorrow, it's literally to think I am cut off, to think I am separated from my relatives. This may be a moment for all of us to throw that away in our pursuit of Minopamatsuan, the good life, a life of peace, a life of balance. And that balance is important. That's not saying that we won't have moments of frustration, of sadness, of anger, of fear. But it means that in our pursuit of balance, those emotions do not dominate our everyday life. We seek out peace, and we get that peace through being in balance with all of our relatives in our environment. So if you want to, in some way, incorporate this into the ceremony of your everyday life, you can find a way to take a moment and acknowledge it. And I think that's one of the most important parts of this moon, is just acknowledging the moment you can see it, the moment you can see, oh, I'm dealing with heavy sorrow. I'm dealing with frustration. I'm dealing with anger. I'm dealing with fear. I'm dealing with bad habits that are not necessarily positively beneficial for my well-being. The moment I've seen that, that can be a catalyst for healing. And that can be a moment where you choose to throw that away as we get ready for the new year that's approaching. And so at the end of Webinige-giizis, later tonight, very late tonight when the moon comes up, I think I'll come down here, look at the moon, and say, "Nawebanon and dakozuen." I'm throwing away my illness, and let go of that as we approach the new year, as we approach spring. And so I want to take a moment and say, Webinige-giizis. Thank you all so much for listening. I'm praying for all of your peace and your well-being. I'm praying for your physical well-being. I'm praying and wishing and hoping that you all have peace, balance in your thoughts and emotion, so that you may know true joy. I'm praying that you all walk along the path of life in a good way. Thank you all so much for listening. Miigwech.